All right, we are live. What's up, y'all? My name is Amir Zen. We're joined tonight by Nick Hankoff. We are going to be talking about some very fun stuff, as we always do. And the theme of tonight's discussion is going to be about reclaiming the American right and the old American right and the Republican Party and some other fun things. Nick, how you doing tonight, bro?
Hey, doing great. Thanks, Amir, for having me on.
Awesome. It is great to have you on tonight.
Loving the streams lately. Loving the streams.
Streams are fun. Do you watch streams regularly outside of you?
Really, I don't. I don't watch live streams. Maybe something recorded, but something else being on one right now. It's been a long time, but glad to be back. Glad to be exposed online for the world.
Right? Yeah. So Nick Hankoff is the former chairman of the Los Angeles County Republican Liberty Caucus. And if you've known me for a long time, you may know that I am the former vice chairman of the Los Angeles County Republican Liberty Caucus. And me and Nick had some pretty wild, fun, and I'd say unique experiences in our time deep in the Republican Party. Nick?
Yeah, it was a short time. It was a long time ago, but it's so relevant now. And there's we were talking about before we went on air, if we only had the social media awareness that folks have today, and also just a lot of things that we know now that we wish we knew then, how much bigger it would be. But of course, I'm very optimistic about the place that we're in right now, where our ideas are going, and the voices out there, and the youth of the movement. It's only gotten, or I should say, I guess it's just stayed younger. We've gotten older, but it's stayed the same age. You know what I'm saying? So we've got a lot to be encouraged about. The Zoomers out there who would just probably as soon enough call us boomers. But Amir's younger than me, by the way. Obviously, everyone watching. But just like you said, Amir, it's like we had a great time, and in so many ways, you could say that we charted paths that were uncharted. But today, folks are in the social media scape that we're in today, for what we thought we were putting ourselves at risk for back then. A lot of folks are really sticking their necks out today on much with much more to lose and much more exposure. So but it's the right time to come back on. So I really appreciate you bringing me on.
Yeah, you said it. It's the right time. And it seems as if today is less lonely than the ideas that we were promoting, say, 10 to 15 years ago, that have much more popular support today and much more acceptance. And what I mean is freedom. Essentially, I would say that, and I don't know if you would agree with me, Nick, but I would say that since, Ron 2008, the Overton window has drastically shifted over to freedom and more libertarian ideals.
Yeah, and the right kind of libertarian ideals. You know what I'm saying? It's like the libertarian thing more today than ever before. It's a scatter set of different beliefs, but I think the right wing take on libertarianism, the what we're going to get into, the old right, the sort of like largely Hoppian view today, the like later Rothbard years sort of right. This
Nick knows
take
his
on
history.
libertarianism. Yeah. So and it's not boring stuff. I mean, this is inspiring stuff. So we've we've got a lot to look forward to, some challenges in the near term, but in the mid to long term, total optimism from my side. I know you too.
Yeah. Hey, Nick, we got you black on the gram right
Yeah,
now.
I put my phone down. Hold on. Sorry, folks.
No worries.
Put my phone
Hey,
down
if you're
'cause
joining us over here, say what's
juggling.
up. Join us on
Juggling.
Rumble. We're on Twitter and YouTube. Check us out on Twitch as well. If you're watching on any of those platforms, how you doing? Please like this video. If you haven't done so yet, please give me a follow. And also, let's quickly talk about the sponsor of this video, which just so happens to be me and my company, Specker.
Yeah.
And you could check out Specker at speckerhealth.com. I'm about to take some Specker energy right now while Nick smokes his
It's all dead.
alternative plant.
I'm like juggling my Instagram live and the cigar goes out. I just wanted to smoke. I just wanted to smoke with Amir. That's all. And it's out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm juggling this microphone because if I set it down, then it doesn't sound as good. And I'm juggling the Instagram live. And so, for the benefit of you people.
Yeah, we're gonna hop off Instagram very soon, y'all. We're just here to let y'all know to go to Rumble and YouTube and all the other platforms.
I'm gonna set this mic
at
over
Amir
here.
Zen official. You could just type in my name, Amir Zen, and official. And Nick, so real quick, if you haven't done so yet, sorry, Nick, before I ask you, make sure to go take a sip of water, go drink some water, and hydrate yourself. Don't forget, be healthy. All right, Nick. So just real quick, give me an overview of what you mean or what we mean when we're talking about reclaiming the American right and what the old right is. And that's what we're going to be talking about more in depth tonight, and how the future of America can go in a much more positive direction. So, Nick, what would you say?
Okay. Number one, the title alludes to a book from Justin Raimondo, the late great Justin Raimondo, and it's a book called Reclaiming. Yeah, Reclaiming the American Right. And what's important about this book, and just easily enough, look up Justin Raimondo's speeches at conferences about Israel's influence on the United States. Look up, Justin Raimondo interviews if you don't want to, take the time to read the book. I mean, obviously, you could read his columns. He wrote 2 to 3 columns a week at antiwar.com, which he was a co-founder of for years on end. So just looking through the old archives of Justin Raimondo.
Also, his take on gay marriage was a very
the gay marriage debate.
Remember that?
Yeah. Oh, of course. The YouTube,
and he was gay,
on YouTube,
so it was so weird being like, wow, that's such an interesting argument from a gay man.
Yeah, so a bit off the beaten path of tonight, but it's still just wonderful to watch. I don't know, I think it was debating someone from Heritage Foundation or from that sort of school of thought, sort of like a neocon libertarian versus Raimondo, who is this, I guess you would say, a paleocon libertarian, and on gay marriage. So if you look up gay marriage Justin Raimondo on YouTube, the debate should come up, hopefully. YouTube
hopefully
results,
it's still there.
YouTube results suck when you search, but
yeah,
but it's out
especially
there,
when you want to search
out
on really freedom related content, right?
Yeah, so Justin spoke at one of our events, actually run by John Dennis, who I believe is the chairman now of the Republican Liberty Caucus, if not the national organization, then the state chapter of California. But this was in 2014. was it 2014 or I think 2014, March 2014, Justin Raimondo came to San Francisco to the California Republican Party State Convention and spoke at our room, which we overflowed, the Republican Liberty Caucus of California hosting Justin Raimondo. And he talked about
That
our
was such
libertarian.
an epic day. I remember that so vividly. I had the opportunity to smoke one with Justin Raimondo, which is a
Rad.
memory I will hold dear for life. So sorry, Nick.
No, not at all. And sorry, I'm off to the side on Instagram over here, but I don't know if we're still on there. But
No, we're good.
so I drove Justin from his home in Sebastopol outside San Francisco to the convention. It was not in San Francisco. If I said that earlier, I was wrong. It was in Sacramento. So I drove him. I got to be, his driver to the convention, and I wish I had talked with him more, but I was trying to be a good driver. But we did have some conversation. We were stuck on the freeway. And who would you want to be stuck on the freeway with more than Justin Raimondo? So stuck on the freeway talking to Justin, and he says, look outside right now. You see all of this? And I'm just looking at the traffic jam. I'm like, yeah, I apologize. I'm sorry. I can't do anything about this. And he says, no, look out. This is the zombie apocalypse. Everyone talks about the zombie apocalypse. This is it. And I'm like, what? And he says, mass immigration. Just, this is too many people. This is the zombie apocalypse. And at the time, I'm like full on libertarian to the extreme, open borders libertarian. And he, of course, closed borders. This is pre-Trump, pre all that. And he just gave me a taste, like a few things to think about. And he was right, man. He was absolutely right on that. So
and could you elaborate a little on what he was saying? Because it seems as if these older libertarian types who were very philosophical were also very realistic and pragmatic about their views and approaches towards what's directly in front of them, right?
Yeah, I think they just were aware of the reality of the situation. Obviously his history goes back further in California politics. And so that was a major issue. But one thing that connected with me, that I don't think he necessarily said this, but I think we might have talked about it, that I was aware of, was, it is strange that libertarians will catch flack for talking about the Federal Reserve. You're anti-Semitic, you're just a gold standard, like you don't understand, gold could never be real money again, or whatever the debate was. But on the, if you said something about ending the Fed, you were a lunatic. The libertarian position was fringe and totally rejected on the Federal Reserve. Now much more mainstream. The other position,
they wouldn't want us focusing on the root cause or anything, right?
Yeah, and then the other radical positions that you wouldn't be allowed to get away with then, especially, would be, say, like what would it be, like anti-war? If you're anti-war, then you're anti-democracy, you're racist because you don't want and you're anti-women because you don't want democracy for Afghanistan.
Yeah, you're either with us or you're with the terrorists.
Yeah,
right?
But so like central banking and war, you were a total psychopath. But if you were open borders, they were like, okay, we can talk to these libertarians. And I was very naive into thinking that, like, okay, well, we got them on this, we can convert them on the other things. And it's like, no, they actually want open immigration. Mass immigration is a vehicle for their agenda. And so, libertarians who haven't awoken to that yet really need to consider that. And so, immigration, we can get off on that topic, but I don't know so much if immigration was, say, a core tenet of the old right, but it was sort of a given in some aspects that you wouldn't be an open borders person. But that's, that is an interesting point of debate among libertarians. And I think it's just worth pointing out, like, our enemies who hate us really don't mind our position on open borders, and that's curious.
Oh, that's very interesting. And I think issue that happens often with libertarian and communist philosophies, because that's essentially what we're talking about here, is that the communists know how to appropriate libertarian language, and it's hard to make distinctions, right? When we talked about defunding the police 15 years ago, we weren't talking about making things less safe and having less security services as a result. We were saying that there are these over-bloated, monopolized services. The free market could take care of them better. If you're going to keep it monopolized, it's over-bloated, and things should be evolved in these systems, right? We weren't trying to completely dismantle a system without strong solutions, right? And that's what happens with the language. Same with open borders. When we were talking about open borders, it's much different than what we're seeing today. And I heard, you use the words mass immigration, and that's essentially what we're seeing right now. Because open borders could mean so many different things, right? If you have open borders in an anarcho-capitalist society, there's still going to be private property borders, right? So it doesn't mean that borders here. There's still
But
going to be
a
borders.
border,
It's just
but the word border, it really it really implies a boundary. It really implies a no-go zone sort of aspect to it. So I think the idea of open borders is just a contradiction in terms, and it's just what we're talking about is the southern border of the United States. Let's get real. That's where the flood of immigration is, and certainly, like, every border is important, but when people say open borders, that's really what they're talking about. And Raimondo looked out at the standstill of traffic and just said, like, not in the sense that all of these people are evil or something, but it's just a total disorder. You know what I'm saying? Of the type of free society that he would want to see. Disorder does not bring freedom. Order does.
good point. And actually, I wanted to mention about John Dennis because he is the chairman of the Republican Liberty Caucus National now, I believe.
Cool.
So
Nice.
shout out to John
I thought
Dennis.
so. I thought so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, continuing the good fight is what John Dennis has done for many years, and seeing guys like him still in the game, in the Bay Area and San Francisco, man, gosh,
Yeah.
like holding his ground kind of thing, which is admirable.
He's got the money. He's got the money. No, I'm just kidding. But really.
So actually, I wanted to talk about the old right, and you're talking about immigration. Actually, I started looking back deeper and deeper into the inception of the Republican Party in America and who made up the Republican Party. And actually, what I recently discovered is that Abraham Lincoln, for example, who was a major part of the Republican Party, right, as many people know, was essentially the wing of the Republican Party that was very open to immigration. And the battles were happening even back then with the mass influx of
I know Lincoln was in favor of migration out of America for certain people.
Yeah, for certain people he was, but for others he was totally fine with all the German communists coming in.
Yeah, he wanted to see mass immigration into Africa out of America.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that a little. Actually, it's Liberia, the country of Liberia, right? It was created as a country for former black slaves to go back to Africa. But at that point, a lot of them were not really connected to Africa and they had been in the Americas for generations, right? So it's funny because the history of Liberia, and y'all should look into Liberia, is that the slaves who did go back there used their American mindsets that they had acquired, and up until very recently were the dominating force in Liberia. They were like the elite. And there were a lot of problems with the native population and the freed Black Americans that went over there. So, yeah. Nick, if you'd like to
Yeah, I'm not
continue on
I'm
that,
not
because I know you know a lot about that as well.
pardon. One thing I'm very optimistic about us reigniting a true liberty right-wing movement, much unlike relighting a cigar. It is not easy to relight a cigar, but I think it's much easier to reignite a movement that's Pat Buchanan-esque, Ron Paul-esque, and Trump-esque. Now you can't deny his impact. So, Liberia, what do I know about it? I know it means freedom, I guess. Liber is in the name. And
Yeah.
and so it's just a liberty country, and I believe they have the US Constitution essentially as their constitution, and it doesn't work. Like it doesn't work over there. And that really tells you a lot, an inconvenient truth. And what that means is that you can't just have free societies anywhere. Free societies are built by free people, and those free people, they are not a mass of individuals. They're actually a whole society unto themselves, and that is something that back in our heyday of libertarians, we just had a hard time coping with. I would say is that it's not an Ayn Randian sort of view where it's a total atomistic society and each individual does their own thing. I mean, in a sense, you're going to have that. I'm not denying that individuals act and that sort of thing. Axiomatically, individuals are the ones who act, but individuals, when you just say the word individual, it sort of just is. It's just a theoretical term. It's like, do individuals exist? They are made up of families. They're made up of histories, of cultures, and you can. And here's where Ayn Rand comes into it. You can sort of deny that reality, but you can't deny the consequences of that reality. And so, yeah, why didn't Liberia work out? I mean, maybe you know better than me, Amir, but I know it didn't, and I know it doesn't. And yet they had the same constitution, they had the same document, they had the same words on the same, maybe more advanced paper, but it's just, that's not the way to go. And what you need for a free society is order, I think, ultimately. And that's sort of a turn that I've taken, where before I would have said order is the daughter of liberty, but I think it's just nicer to think that way when you're young. But as you age and you grow, you understand that it's just not true.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot
Now the
to unpack
debate
there, Nick.
now the debate begins.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, all right. So I have my thoughts on this. Let me know what you think here. If I had to analyze why Liberia, I wouldn't say it failed. It's still a state today. They're still very Americanized today. But over the last decades, in recent history, they had some fucked up conflicts with each other, right? And to the point I was bringing up earlier, a lot of that conflict that's happening today stemmed from that mass immigration of the Black Americans to Liberia, and then given specific rights, and then the native populations were kind of left out of things. And it's like, okay, well, why didn't that system work? I would think that, all right, so you just sent a bunch of people that you just released from slavery, and like you're sending them over there to run the system, and the system that they've been under is very authoritarian. So would I expect them to be acting in a similar manner as the people who own them before? It's expected, but I understand the point that you're making. Is, do these people, I guess the question is that, do these people have the ability to achieve equal or higher levels of, I don't know, civilization? I don't know, like, is that the right word?
Yeah, I just think it becomes more fundamental than an ideology. Like an ideology, you have sort of the privilege, I guess, to have an ideology when you're in the West, and you can build these lofty notions in your mind. But fundamentally, Liberia's average IQ is like 65, 67, and you're just not going to get much from that. I mean, I don't know what else there is to say, but you can't go to Iraq and spread freedom through the barrel of a gun as America once thought it could, and you can't really spread freedom through like peaceful means necessarily, through just like giving someone a constitution and saying, read John Locke or read this. Like neither of those means are going to achieve the end you're looking for, and so we should just stop trying to achieve the unachievable. That's the way I would say it. Like, let Liberia be Liberia. I'm not mad at Liberia. Like, I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't really know anything about the country, to be quite frank, but you could probably look at just the lives that people lead there, and it's not somewhere anyone wants to move to. They want to move out of there, probably, is my guess.
Well, this is the thing too, is that let me ask you this. I want to know your opinion on this. And all right, Western culture and Western civilization, from my historical analysis, goes back to my ancestors in Iran, who built many of the practices that were then practiced by the Greeks, the Romans, passed on to the Germans, Celtic tribes, for example. These people and their cultures come from common ancestors, right? So, the thing that I guess the question I have is that, do you accept that Western civilization does go back that far and does actually go out of Western Europe, and where we consider Western Europe and America, where we consider Western civilization? This is something that I don't really hear anybody talking about much. A few people, but it's an analysis that I'm bringing up, and I would like to hear other people's opinions on it, who do value Western civilization and culture, like yourself.
Yeah, and look, I'm not denying that that I'm not denying that you can't have I'm not denying that there is prosperity and good ideas around the world and this sort of thing, and even greater than that, great civilizations, especially in the ancient world. I'm not an authority on the history of Iran or Persia and what was built there, and what that led to. I mean, I just think getting back to the issue at hand in America, we have a history to look to, and we can look at the American Revolution critically. We can look at World War II critically. We can look at our founding myths critically now, and not just say we're going to wipe the slate clean and build up fresh from some ideological stance that we can just, say, well, we can manifest this sort of notion in our minds of a perfect society fresh from nothing. No, you play with the cards that you're dealt. So I think the direction of America right now is being steered by an elite that has no connection to our history, no connection to the people in the society, no matter the the socioeconomic status, race, religion, any way you point to it. It's a total disconnect between the elite and American society. And so, if we're going to talk about building a free future and freedom here at home, then we need to look at power structures and sort of think about how those move and how those shift and change. So you can learn a lot from looking at, I'm sure, ancient Persia, and maybe even, I wouldn't know, but maybe more contemporary history in Iran, or not going so far back as ancient times.
Well, I would say, pre-Islam. By the time the
Right,
Islamic
right.
conquest of Iran happened, it was, for pure Iranian history, it was Arabized to this day, essentially. Unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I believe that. I believe that for
Yeah.
sure.
So that's actually something that I, who has ancestors who came from that area, is a topic that I discuss a lot, is about how a lot of these ideas were wiped out from Iran, from ancient Iran, when the Islamic conquest of Iran happened. And the golden age of Islam, for example, the a huge chunk of those golden age individuals were Persian, but they had to use Arab names and had to adhere to the Arab culture of the conquerors. And so that's why, from like a from a timeline standpoint, I talk about, I kind of go from pre that standpoint. But actually, I would actually, this is a really good thing to talk about, because this is a epic part of American history that is not, I don't think it's really known. But the thing about Iranian history is that, first of all, Iran means land of the Aryans, right? So already it's like nixed. You're like, hey man, you can't say
Right.
that word, man. So already, they say Indo-European as a replacement now, but it's Indo-Aryan. So, the thing that I was bringing up earlier, it's like, all right, the Germanic peoples, the people that kind of spread out all across the common ancestry. So one thing that I want to share with anybody who's watching this, especially if you're American or Iranian, is the founding fathers of the United States were actually reading about ancient Iran. And I just want to bring up, I just want to read this. This is just some things that I've read before that I just pulled up. So I just want to read them really quick, because this is a epic piece of American history that shows that these ideas were recognized before the last few hundred years, where it's mostly assumed by people in the West that many of these ideas just popped up, 400 years ago, around that time. And then these European guys started popularizing it, which they did. However, when you take that history back far enough, you see that these ideas of liberty were being played with thousands of years in the past, as we already know with Greece and Rome. But with the Iranian and the Persian Empire and the Iranian empires, that's kind of swept under the rug, because I would assume that it's not very good for divide and conquer if, Americans know our interlinked, cultural backgrounds and philosophical leanings. Because again, like I said, they're not adhering to that. The Iranian government doesn't adhere to those ideas today. So let me just read this real quick. It's the title is, and this is from United States Institute of Peace, and the title is Cyrus Connects Ancient Iran and U.S. Democracy. The 2,600-year-old Cyrus Cylinder, widely considered the world's first human rights charter, is now on display in Washington, D.C., the first stop on its tour of 5 U.S. museums. The U.S. founding fathers were inspired by the Persian monarch Cyrus's tolerant rule of the first multilingual empire. This was the Persian Empire, and Cyrus was the first king of the Persian Empire, the Achaemenid Empire, which spanned from Egypt to India. The story of Persia, Iran, is part of the story of modern United States, according to British Museum director Neil McGregor. So just to continue on this just a little bit, Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States, valued Cyrus the Great's legacy. Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and other founding fathers read many ancient historical works in Greek and Latin. In the 18th century, that model of religious tolerance based on a state with diverse cultures, but no single dominant religion, became a model for the founding fathers. And if you know about Persian history, you know how well the Persian Empire kept their very diverse culture together. And this is why I have questions about mass immigration. And now I'm going to ask you about it. So let me just finish this real quick. It's a long article, so if you want to read it, it's Cyrus Connects.
I totally, just real quick, just to comment briefly on what you've said so far. It rings true because there, as you said, there is this Indo-European root of it all. And so it should be somewhat familiar to us. Both you and I, we can relate to this. And I think, when we talk about liberty, liberty doesn't have to be individualistic, restrictively. I think, you have to, I'm sure there's some great books I could read on the institutions and the social dynamics that were Indo-European, that were unique to that civilization, that helped to foster a call it a multicultural society. But I think multiculturalism is a death knell for the West. But I think that doesn't mean that there's absolutely no tolerance, and that there has to be a one religion, a one way to go. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's a very nuanced take, but it rings very true. So yeah, keep on.
Yeah, just I'm going to read a little more. This is a long article. There's another one as well, but this is just to really, you could have all right. So Nick, do you agree with this? If a culture, all right, here's my argument for you, Nick. All right. If a culture is strong enough, does the culture survive an influx of a population that doesn't have that culture? There's my first question to you. Did that make sense?
No, say it again. I was looking at someone in the chat who has the same last name as me. I have no idea who this person is. Hey, Dad. But he said, nice birdhouse. So I was just showing off my birdhouses. If you're on Instagram, you can't see them. So you got to go to Rumble. But yeah, birdhouses. Uncle Gil built my birdhouses. But yeah, go rephrase the
Awesome.
question for me.
Nick, if you could also retweet on Twitter as well, our stream that
Oh
we're
yeah,
doing
yeah,
right
yeah.
now.
Whoops. Here we go.
So the question that I was posing is, do you think that it's possible for a culture to outlast population influx? Do you think it's possible? Do you think
No,
that the American way of life, the American way of freedom, can
people
survive population influxes, foreign
no
population influxes?
no, not really. I mean, it will be forever changed. So it's not to say that it can't change and adapt in some sense, but you're never going to have what you had previously, so no, it would not survive on it. It would be maybe partially recognizable, but it's not going to be. You can't say that the mass migration isn't. You wouldn't be able to tell, right? You'd be able to tell that something happened and that probably shifted it.
So, all right, this is hold on, give me one second. What I've been thinking about is this, because again, I talk a lot about Iranian history. That's where my ancestors came from. So I try to tap in a lot. And again, through that tapping in, I found, wow, America is so interlinked with Iranian culture. And I very specifically say Iranian culture because that's that Indo-European Indo-Iranian, Indo-Aryan, like I said, we're not like that word that connects is not used as much these days for whatever reason you may infer on. So, all right, what do you think about this? I've been studying the Islamic conquest of Iran a lot over the many years. And it's just such an interesting piece of history that we don't talk about much here because people don't really recognize the importance of it. But like I'm talking about the connections of Western civilization and colonialism from outside forces that do change cultures. So when the Arab conquest of Iran happened, this was in the 600s. So like right after Islam was started popping off and was created, they're just like, all right, bro, we're going to go take over Iran. We're going to go take over Egypt. And now we're going to go take over everywhere we can, right? And that happened within the first century of Islam being created. So when they went into Iran, and this is, one thing I always have to make clear too, is we're talking about history here and not theology. And oftentimes when I just talk about just Islamic Arab history, people try to tie in the religion into this. So it's like, yeah, their religion was Islam, but they were Arab conquerors essentially. They came from this area, they had their religion, and then they conquered the Iranian people over there. Now, here's my point: is today, Nick, after over 1,000 years of the Arab conquerors pushing that culture and Islamic practices on the Iranian populations to this day, as you see, how could the Iranian people today? Well, Nick, let me ask you. You hear about your Persian friends celebrating Persian New Year's, right? Iranian New Year, a spring equinox, right? Hey, that is not the Muslims are not down with that. When the Islamic Revolution happened on, they tried to make those traditions go away, and for over 1,000 years, they've tried to make certain ancient Iranian traditions and cultural norms and practices disappear unsuccessfully.
Oh yeah, and I hope I hope I didn't say anything to contradict that before, because I totally agree with you.
No. I'm
And I
I'm
think,
just trying to correlate
yeah,
that into like I think that okay. So here's my point. I guess let me just. So the point being of all that talk is that have a feeling that the U.S. constitutional system that does have the ability to constantly grow and evolve, unlike many other government systems, is strong enough to shine over certain ideologies people might have had where they grew up somewhere else. I guess I have
okay,
a more positive outlook, and I'm just using that Iranian history
yeah,
as the layer for that positive outlook.
yeah, and I think it is connected to the people and their heritage. That's like where I would synthesize with your words, is that it's very difficult to stop tradition. Like, ultimately, like, I mean, you can really put it on pause and you can really dull its effects, but it's going to come back. So, I think probably where we would agree is that there's indelible marks that peoples make on their societies. So you have that impact in Iran, um, and call it what you will, Arabization or Islamification, whatever you would say about the changes that happened in Iran. They weren't able to entirely overthrow and demolish and kill that ancient custom. And like, look at the United States, look at the American Indian population here. Someone's going to say that they're still carrying on a tradition from their uncle somewhere, but it's like, you wouldn't say that the United States is somehow a culture of the American Indian. Like, the American Indian is like an exception to the culture of the United States. It's like it's one culture is having the impact on the other, and that's largely because of you know of the fact that the population was replaced. You know what I'm saying? So I'm saying that you can replace the culture and replace the tradition only so much, only insofar as you can replace the population, is sort of my take. And like, just to draw another example of mass migration in the United States in the late 19th century, the Italians, the Irish, the Germans coming in to the United States, a third of them left. A third of them went back home. Okay, and still to this day, there are voting patterns between these different ethnic groups, even though they're all European. There's still differences between those groups.
Yeah,
And
can you expand on that? Because you made that comment recently, I heard, and I
yeah, I
wanted
found
to
it.
just hear more about what you were saying about how, like, to this day, they still have these voting, generally speaking, they still have the same voting behaviors as when they first came here or that group.
Yeah, I have this article that I've just bookmarked and looked back on over the years, and it's the myth of European assimilation, and it's from this website called ideasanddata.com. Or no, forgive me, it's a WordPress website, so it's ideasanddata.wordpress.com. The myth of European assimilation. And I haven't like done deep research into this, so it's like, you know, um, probably a lot of this is wrong or whatever. But if it's not, it sort of makes sense that the United States was a different country insofar as different people came into it. And this sort of like melting pot idea of America is just, it's not true. Like, people, you don't get to just you don't get to make a German an Anglo. You don't get to make an Irish an Italian. They're not interchangeable. You know what I'm saying? They're distinct, and we should honor those distinctions and recognize them, good or bad. You know what I'm saying? So the fact, I think it's interesting to note that, like, you know, a third of that mass migration in the late 19th century went back home. That's just an interesting factoid on itself that a lot of people don't talk about. But you're not going to, it's I think it's an industrial notion to say that you can mass produce an American, you know, through an educational system or through some other cultural tract, through some rites of passage or something, that you could make someone into someone that they're just not. You know, I mean, people are going to adopt and adapt, and take on certain qualities, but I think there's something indelible in our human nature that that really should be celebrated, actually, as a good thing. Like, we should actually feel relief at the fact that you can't just you know what would I say, just that people aren't so malleable, that they're not just lumps of clay that you can, you know, morph and form into something. um I don't know how many times that has to be proven for us to get it. It's sort of a frustrating thing, especially in the Western world, probably because I think in the Western world there's this sort of culture of, if we can imagine it, we can create it. You know, you look at the great architecture, you look at the great art creations, artists in the Western world, and it's sort of this idea that what the West does best is create things. And there's a lot of great things that have been innovated and invented and created in the West, but you can't apply that to humans. You can't apply that to individuals or to societies where you can just make them from scratch and invent them anew. And so that's all the point I'm trying to put across is, you know, getting back to like our original topic at hand, at where we were 10, 15 years ago in the Ron Paul movement, and the bright-eyed bushy-tailed days of libertarianism, where we could just say, you know, send send the Declaration of Independence, send the U.S. Constitution to Liberia.
Just read these
Yeah.
books and these articles on Mises.org, and everything will be okay. All right.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe the next question, if I'm not hopping ahead or something, but the next question is, what would people be assimilating to in America today? You know, so
the U.S. constitutional system that is unique among any other government system, essentially. So let me ask you this. Okay, so this is, as I'm, you know, constantly debating myself about these topics and trying to just figure out what the right, you know, starting point is. And all right, look, my family immigrated to this country, right? Not the native religion of this place, not the native people of this place, from a far off land thousands of miles away. And in one generation, I'm American, man. Like, I'm America first.
Oh yeah.
I was born and raised in America. I adhere to American culture. You know, this is something we should talk about tonight too, about how, you know, hey man, you know, my family might come from Iran, but I'm American and America comes first, and my allegiances are here. And
So
this is where my thought goes, is that, like, if America's culture and system wasn't as strong as it was, then perhaps it would take longer, or maybe never even happen, like in Europe, to assimilate to America and love what America is in one generation.
I just think it's getting diluted in terms of what the definition of an American is. I mean, there was a poll done some time ago. It could be, it could be a decade old or something. But I do remember the Associated Press or Reuters, one of these, doing a poll on what it means to be an American, or what makes you proud to be an American. And it had nothing. The majority of responses were, frankly, it means you're a nice person. And I'm not joking. Like, that's what people just responded. So when you have I think you're a unique case. I don't think you're like the typical person. Like, if you ask someone why they're proud to be an American, yes, like there's some folks who will say we love freedom and that's what makes us American. And I think that's sort of a vacuous statement all in itself, that we love freedom. What does that even mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
But but I think if you asked Americans in the 18th century, probably what makes them proud to be an American, it probably had much more to do with the land that their family established, okay, that they built from scratch when their families got here, versus what, over time it just became sort of this civil rights religion-esque sort of thing of, I'm proud to be an American because I believe in equality, or I believe in freedom. As I said, this poll, the number one answer was, being an American means you're nice. And I used to think that was like Canadian. You know what I mean? I don't know. I had the notion that Canadians were nice. Like, when you think of a Canadian, what do you think of? A nice person.
Yeah, well, not
And that's,
anymore, right?
no,
Yeah,
and that's
nobody
fine.
thinks that anymore. But
But
yeah,
you
a
know what
few
I'm
years
saying?
ago, we all used to think that, right?
It's like what's palatable on MSNBC is what it means to be an American. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I think it's been diluted, and I think folks have been conditioned over time to just passively accept that America is an open corridor for the world, that America is a shopping mall with nukes. I don't know who said that first, but someone said America was a shopping mall with nukes. And it's like, is that what we want? Is that what America should be? Is that what America was created to be? Is America created to just be, I remember Charlie Kirk giving a talk in Israel, and him speaking to, donors, supporters in Israel, and saying, what's great about here in Israel is the land and the people, and you have this, I'm sort of characterizing or editorializing a bit what he said, but essentially what he said was, you have these tangible aspects that make you proud to be Israeli, whereas America, and now I'm getting closer to what Charlie actually said, was that America is not defined by its people or even the borders. America is defined by its ideas of freedom and ideology. And America is wherever anyone in the world is free. Wherever there's freedom in the world, that's America. And that cannot withstand. That is not real. That is not sustainable. And I don't think that's true. I think America, depending on where you're going to define it, in history, it's just not the same place and never will be again. I think that's a problem. I think Jefferson said, in principle, stand. I'm going to totally butcher this quote and get it whole wrong. But does anyone know in the chat maybe the Jefferson quote on standing like a rock on principle, and in turn, like, does that make sense? Like, I don't think we're standing as a rock when we're just saying we're going to be open borders and we're going to be multicultural and not have any sense of meaning in a literal sense of Americanism. And so, I think the old right was up against this question in a big way leading up to World War II and post World War II. And World War II is now the new founding myth of America, as opposed to the Revolutionary War.
And real quick, can you what is the old right? What constitutes the old right?
The old right was a movement of quasi-libertarian, what would be referred to now as like maybe the origins of paleoconservatism, and that is just folks who, in their time of day, stood against Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal and entry into World War I and also World War II subsequently. And it's characterized today as an isolationist movement. But a lot of these voices of the old right would be and are, in fact, canceled on the American right today, which is now a neoconservative American right. And so it's this long lost tradition.
Yeah, and these were most of these people made up a lot of Republican Party back then until around the 60s, 70s, and 80s when the neoconservatives essentially took over the Republican Party or became the dominant force in the Republican Party. Neoconservatives being disenfranchised Democrats who were no longer wanted in the Democratic Party and then found a new home in the Republican Party, right?
Yeah, they shapeshifted into Republicans, and it's I think it's important that folks know that they have this option on the table. It's like before Trump, before Ron Paul, the only thing a Republican could be was a Bush Republican.
Yeah, George Bush, Dick Cheney. If you're anything else, then
and even
they're going to come at
Reagan,
you like they did us.
even Reagan was supposed to synthesize parts of the old right. But even Reagan just sort of idolized FDR. And so it really was this lost tradition.
They're all one step away from just being communists, right?
Yeah. yeah. And Reagan was more or less like an open borders kind of guy. And so like even then you weren't really cutting it. So when Ron Paul came along and introduced this tradition to folks and said it's okay to be Republican and anti-war, it's okay, in fact you should be anti-war because you're a Republican, was sort of like Ron Paul's take.
And all of us opened our eyes like, wait a minute, did this guy just say Republicans are historically anti-war? Huh?
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Having this weird when we all heard that, or many of us. I did. I know I did. I don't know about you, Nick.
And what did we have in 2007? We had YouTube, the very early beginnings of YouTube, and some message boards, and a somewhat, arguably freer internet in some ways.
That's what I like right now. It feels like the 2007 internet right now.
Yeah. The internet's starting to get a little better now. Like Elon Musk has been, I would say a marginal improvement on Twitter, but it's an important marginal improvement. And Trump, Trump in the debates, he was in South Carolina saying, George Bush let 9/11 happen. You know what I mean? Like essentially like blaming Bush for 9/11 and being anti-war. Trump was the anti-war candidate in 2016. And so like now it's undeniable that the swing is going in the opposite direction of what the establishment wanted. And so they're trying to replace Trump. And look, I mean, Trump, there's lots of problems that are obvious with Trump, and his policies are right at the front of that, at the forefront of that. So, I'm not apologizing for the errors and wrongdoings of the Trump administration. But all I'm saying is that the Trump phenomenon would not have happened without Ron Paul, and the future of the Republican Party really depends on the Trumpist like sort of movement and whatever sort of amalgamation follows that. But it's one trend line of the right. And so I guess what I want to say about that is that line of thinking that I think Ron Paul and more so Trump and really Pat Buchanan as sort of the spirit behind Trump is the recognition of America as a place with a people, and a people that has sovereignty and can do things. Not that, we are say in like Bibi Netanyahu's words, a place that's like easily movable. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I think it's important.
Say that.
Yeah, that's why I think it's important to distinguish the important difference. And it's not just, when folks, not to get too in nitty gritty of the 2024 election, but it's like,
yeah, no, hold on real quick.
Yeah,
I'm just cutting off over here. If you're watching us on Instagram, come on over to YouTube, Rumble, Twitter. If you're watching us right now on Rumble, Twitch, YouTube, or Twitter, say what's up. Leave your comments in the chat. We got some chats coming in that I just wanted to read real quick. We got one right here that's just a little shout out. We'll pop them up right here. Sir P. Sergio Serrato says, great to hear about Raimundo. His insights are missed. Yes, shout out to you. And let's see, we got right here, Mr. M. Hankoff. You can't have America without Amir. Amir first. Yeah, I like that. I
Let's
like that.
go.
All right,
Let's go.
let's see. We got another one over here. Let's check this. It's a matter of principle. Stand like a rock in matters of taste. Swim with the current. Ooh, I like that.
Yeah,
If
see
you
that.
would have a happy family life, remember two things. In matters of principle, stand like a rock. All right.
Yeah, dad coming in clutch. Let's go, dad. And yeah, and that's what I was saying is like, in matters of principle, stand like a rock. I think that has to be taken, as it's stated there, literally in some sense, even though it's a metaphorical sort of turn of phrase there. Rock, okay, the most like literal, tangible thing that exists, something that's real and foundational, I think is important. And I don't think you can stand like a rock in ideological terms and thinking purely theoretically. I think that you have to sort of see America as a real place and not an idea. America is not an idea, it's a place, and that's important.
So you agree with that premise that America is an idea?
No, America is not an idea. Sorry.
Well, you're saying,
America's
yeah, so you're saying the opposite of that, that we need to essentially
Yeah.
decide who we are, what makes an American. I'm more under the thinking currently that it is the philosophy that makes us American. The American experiment may supersede cultural backgrounds from other places. Now, the reason that I have this thought is because, again, I'm just purely just viewing this from a historical standpoint. Say in the 1600s, the 1700s, right? The 1600s and 1700s, there were already problems with, Scots coming in and Irish and then Dutch and then French and then Jewish people. This battle has essentially been had with different people just coming in, flooding America. That's not even talking about all the people that were here before. So the thing that I'm trying to just think is, for the future of humanity and what systems work most efficiently to bring together the most of humanity peacefully with minimal war. And
Of course, and I think that goes to recognizing distinctions and differences and cooperating with those. And the opposite of that is this melting pot view. I don't think that they are compatible ideas. I think they're at odds with each other.
well, and this is like what I would ask you is like, all right, so wouldn't you say that all of these groups that I just mentioned, and this is before the 1800s, I believe that all these groups were there in America. So that's a melting pot, and that's a melting pot from hundreds of years ago, even before the United States government existed. The melting pot of America was just blasting from all angles, right? So hundreds of years later, we're still talking about and still respecting the foundations that built the system of America, right? So my thought is, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong on this, is I'm just, trying to figure out what the right direction for humanity is. And it seems like America has been a melting pot, and there are just so many competing forces in America that one group, it's hard to say one group is the American group. And another thing, bringing up the Native Americans or the American Indians, um, the thing about the U.S. Constitution and the American system is that those people have also assimilated, and also the U.S. government gave them constitutional rights. But I mean, if you look at American Indians today, a lot of them are very American, right? And they love America.
But
I mean,
look
you
at the
would say
different
the opposite as well,
but
but
look at the difference between American Indians who are on the reservation and those who are not. Like, who's succeeding in life? Who's having a good time in America?
well,
Not
there's
those.
some reservations that are doing really. Actually, I've been looking into this more recently. It is important to note that a lot of reservations are there. Okay, so there are reservations in America, and each reservation has their own finances. And there are these reservations in America that are doing great. They're taking care of their people, like giving them money from their investments that they make, like doing really well with their populations. Some other reservations are doing very poorly. And that's the interesting thing about America's melting pot, is that all of those different American Indian populations came to agreements with the American government, and the American system evolved in a way to keep that melting pot from exploding more than
I
it
just think
was before.
I think melting pot, I don't know if you're using it the way that, like, I think of it, because a melting pot, it it means that everything is congealed, like, together. Everything is interchangeable. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, that's not the America we live in. Okay. I mean, look at the voting patterns of all different groups of people. They're rather predictable. You look at just the obvious one would be like 95, maybe not that high of a percentage, but consistently over the decades, it's been 80-90% Black Americans voting Democrat. And that's not what I think of when I think of a melting pot. When I think of a melting pot, I think of interchangeability. Like, people, there's no distinguishing between parts of it. If it's all melted into a pot, it's all like one thing. And I'm saying there's distinctions to be made, so it's more of a stew. Okay. And so I'm happy with the stew. Okay. Like, if you want to say that America is a stew and it tastes good and it works together and the flavors work together well, I'm like, there's a lot to say for that. That's true.
Yeah.
America does not belong to one group. However, it would be a different country if a whole other group came here. And by the way, since Biden's been in office, I think it's been, like, estimates are 5 million
Yeah,
border
millions.
crossings.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like this is one of the biggest mass
So, I
influxes in
mean,
American history.
look at California. What languages are being spoken in the home? Is it English? I think the majority is not. I could be wrong, but I want to say the majority of languages spoken in the home in California is not English. Someone fact check me on that. But is that a melting pot? That's not a melting pot. That's replacement. That's something different coming in.
Well, even
So
in American history with the Germans, there were Germans in America who were forced to stop speaking German and speak
sure,
English.
sure, and quite willfully on their part, and there are parts out here, closer to where I live, or in Pennsylvania and Indiana, and parts of the Amish community who refuse to learn English. I guess I don't
They
know a
were
whole lot
there,
about it,
yeah, and there's some of
but
the
that's
people that the
yeah,
American government did not succeed on,
yeah,
and still
exactly,
retained their culture
yeah.
to this day. So, but they're still American, right? They still respect America, and
Nah, I mean, it's in varying degrees, I suppose, but
well, that's the thing that I think is what should be valued about the American system, is that I think the American system. I guess the point I'm making is I think the American system is a really good starting point to grow on positive solutions that can like this, because this is where I'm thinking. It's like, how can we just have the most individual human freedom and also minimize violence as well at the highest levels possible?
Yeah.
And it seems like the American system over the last few hundred years has done that very well on a level that
But what is that
most
producing? What is that producing now? You've got record suicide rates, drug addictions, OnlyFans. The culture is Netflix. It's like, this is not
well,
going
that's another
somewhere
thing, like
positive.
American history.
Where's the family growth? Where's the like building legacy for the future? We're talking about the old right, and we have reverence for folks who remind us of tradition and uphold tradition. And instead, America's turned into a consumerist society where culture is a Family Guy clip or something like that. So I'm just saying you've got you've got individual freedom on a pedestal here, and the libertarian worldview has to answer for the downside of putting of what that does. And so you've got a society that not long ago held land for their family for all future generations, and somewhere along the line all that land was sold off to move to Chicago or to move to Los Angeles. And in my own, I don't live with my extended family. I left. My family's all over the map, as most people's families are, if their families are even still together to even speak of. And so, that's a cost. That's not a benefit. That's a cost. And so we can weigh the costs and benefits. But we have to be coldly, impartial to this and look at it and say, what are we building towards the future? And is America becoming something that's easily captured, easily moved? And I think the proof is in the pudding that it has become that.
And this is so I want to read this to you. Let me ask you a question. If Karl Marx wrote a letter congratulating Joe Biden, what would you think?
Oh, my phone's dying. I gotta.
Yeah, actually, we're cutting it off. I'm gonna cut off on Instagram
get off
right
Instagram.
now.
My phone's.
If you're watching on Instagram, yeah, hop on Rumble or YouTube or Twitter.
That's how phones explode and kill people, Amir. You're trying to kill me.
Instagram Live. All right, boom. That's all right. Let me, check that real quick. Sorry about that. So this is my take on this: is that there's something in the American system that is keeping things alive, because this exact debate that we're having today, from my study of American history, is just a tale as old as our history. The same debates about immigration have been happening for hundreds of years in America. I just want to read. So if anybody tuning in, listening to this right now, Nick already knows a lot about the history of Abraham Lincoln. This is another one to add to your Abraham Lincoln history. The letter that was written to Abraham Lincoln by Karl Marx and others who were part of the International Workmen's Association, the Central Council, and Karl Marx was one of those people. So, it starts with saying, "Sir, this is to Abraham Lincoln from a group of European internationalist communists." The first ones, right? Karl Marx and his homies. "We congratulate the American people upon your re-election by a large majority. If resistance to the slave power was the reserved watchword of your first election, the triumphant war cry of your re-election is death to slavery. From the commencement of the titanic American strife, the working men of Europe felt instinctively that the Star-Spangled Banner carried the destiny of their class. The contest of the territories which opened the dire epopee was it not to decide whether the virgin soil of immense tracts should be wedded to the labor of the emigrant or prostituted by the tramp of the slave driver? And this goes on like it's a couple more paragraphs. So if anybody wants to read the full thing, just Google Karl Marx's letter to Abraham Lincoln. And the Lincoln administration actually responded back to this letter as well. So this whole, the working class communist stuff, literally 200 years ago, they were having the same exact debates, and they were saying, hey, we're going to America. And then the Americans who were already here were saying, hey, man, don't come over here with those shitty communist ideas. And then they came over here with those shitty communist ideas, and America has still survived. I mean, it survived to the point where we get to talk about this conversation.
It sounds to me,
this conversation, right?
You ask me.
So what do you think about that?
Yeah. You asked me, how would I feel if Marx wrote a congratulating letter to Biden? I would be like, well, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised because I'm against Biden. I'm against Marx. But it sounds like maybe you're on the side of Marx here, Amir. No, I'm just kidding. But we're debating, right? But
definitely not no communism for me.
Because Marx called it Marx called it a new birth of freedom. Okay, and
well, that's the thing. To what I was saying earlier, it's like communists have historically done a good job just using these words like freedom when it doesn't actually mean freedom in practice, right? And what I'm saying is, like, hundreds of years ago in American history, they were having the same exact debates as we were having today. And for some reason, the American system continues to still be the most dominant system, arguably.
Sure.
As far as government system goes.
Well, and that's how empires roll. Like, they have a long, it's like the death of empires is goes slowly and then happens all at once. So, like, yeah, America's like all just steam at this point, and it's going to run out. But in terms of like it being a world empire and having that influence on the world, that's not going to last. So,
and part of being an empire, typically in empire history, you become a metropolitan culture as a result of the empire. So that Persian Empire I'm talking about, they essentially had to figure out, like, hey, man, how are we going to keep the peace with all these different religions and these different cultures? And that's where my mind is, and it seems like the American system is doing that. But I understand your point that eventually it crushes under its own weight. And the way I'm looking at this is like, yeah, it's just the anatomy of an empire, and America is using the anatomy of an empire. So the inevitable outcomes of what historically happens.
We should ask why Marx favored the American Revolution and favored the Civil War. Like, that should give us pause. You know what I mean?
Well, that should give us Abraham Lincoln was they were internationalists.
Yeah, but
they were communists. They were all like communist leaning.
It was in the revolution. It was in this idea of turning over the previous order and establishing something radical and new. And that was what Marx liked about the American Revolution. And that was what he liked about the Civil War too. And also, just to add a little bit more to that, it wasn't just that Marx wrote a letter, but also Lincoln's army was full. Oh, your battery's exhausted. Oh no.
Yeah, not for long. Not for long.
All right, Amir's coming back.
Oh man, I'm so glad you know about this.
Yeah, so check this out. Lincoln's army also had German immigrants in it who were known as the 48ers.
Yes, the 48ers. You know about that. Yo, talk about that.
So these were revolutionaries, socialist revolutionaries.
They were communists. Yeah, the communists of America that were a big chunk of the Republican Party. So the original Republican Party, these 48ers were a chunk of that Republican Party. So when we take the old right back before, like,
the old right doesn't mean Lincoln. The old right doesn't mean Lincoln.
There were actually a lot of communists too, but just that's the thing. Like, that's what I look at it. It's like, wow, just like today, we're having this debate in the Republican Party, and there are all these different factions, and we're like, oh yeah, the neocons, they're like the communists.
Look up 1939 American Communist Party, 1939 American Communist Party convention, and whose head is up there like the head of Mussolini or something, but it's not Mussolini, I guarantee you that. 1939 American Communist Party convention.
Dude.
if you can share it on your screen.
Dude.
But anyone else
I'm
can
going to
Google.
share the screen right now.
Yeah.
Dude, what? Dude. Yo, y'all are not going to believe whose face is blasted. Wow. I guess so. I guess it would be historically accurate then
Yeah.
to call Abraham Lincoln a blatant communist and one of the first communists.
Yeah. That's why it's when people talk about King Lincoln, Tom DiLorenzo.
Yeah, the first emperor of America.
Yeah, it's like sort of right, but also like that would almost be a good thing compared to this. Like I'd much rather have a monarch than, you know, in like a traditional sense than sort of like this communist. But it's funny because Lincoln's head's blasted up there, and I'm sure I don't know the year or whatever, but it's probably around that time, maybe during the war years in the 40s or something. But the American Fascist Party or maybe American Nazi Party.
The Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, I think they also had a huge epigraph of George Washington. So their guy would be Washington, whereas the communists would pick Lincoln. So you see right there, sort of the problem with America is that it is a revolutionary.
Yeah, so sorry, if you're watching this right now, you could just look at the screen here real quick and see whose picture this is. Nick, what did you say?
1939 American Communist Party convention. You see Lincoln there, and
that is a big ass Lincoln as well.
Yeah,
that is right there for everybody to see. It's like that. Like they're making it the main part.
Yeah, right? And I know Washington would be up there if it was the fascist party kind of thing. You know, sort of the fatherland figure would be Washington. So it's just interesting, you know, it's like these heads are on Mount Rushmore, but do they really belong together? In what way do they belong together? And is America just this revolutionary place where, you know, it can just be molded and crafted and overturned? And you know, I think the problem in America today, for those of us who are anti-war and want individual freedom legitimately, but also want to, you know, revive community and see value in healthy collectivism, which I'm not like total afraid of that term anymore. But I think we have to see that, like, you know, the problem with America is that it's sort of this revolutionary place, and revolutions just die out. Like that's sort of the problem with revolutions, is they're the definition of a revolution. It's sort of just spins around and you end up back where you started, kind of thing. So it's just an interesting thing to look at. Like, how is America a communist country? No. Is America a fascist country? No. And yet the Communist Party
massive elements of fascism and communism throughout the last few hundred years of American history? Absolutely. And that's what I'm saying, is that there's something about the American system that just keeps, or at least it's the philosophy of freedom. And again, you're like, well, what does freedom even mean? It's like, well, we have our ideas of freedom. And that's what I'm saying, is that looking back into thousands of years ago, you see that these ideas, whether it was in ancient Iran or ancient Greece or ancient Rome or other areas, that these ideas were being played around with. And it just wasn't until around the English Revolution that these ideas became big enough to where they could create its own government, right?
Yeah. But you know, these institutions are only as strong as the people that lead them and make them work. And you know, the infrastructure is the same thing. The infrastructure is only as strong as the people building it and maintaining it. And so you know, that's really the question of the future, is is, are we going to be able to just change the demographics of the country in a whole way that has never been done before, because that's the trajectory we're on, and are we just supposed to assume that it's all going to be fine and dandy and actually better than before, or stay the same? I think it's actually going to get much worse, because this is just a preview of things to come. We've already seen the deterioration of the country, as I talked about before, with suicide rates, drug addictions. Whole institutions are being carved out, and you just look at wokeism across the country, in the the capitalist, the grand capitalist machine in the country. This is something that is going to be really interesting, because on one hand it can't sustain itself, and then on the other hand it's like, what comes out on the other side when this all crumbles? And it seems to be crumbling fast, like the US dollar. Maybe the US dollar, people argue it has 2 years left, a decade left, 30 years left, whatever it is. Within our lifetime, we're probably going to see the dollar diminished, if not outright just exploded, in sort of a Misesian, crack up boom. And that's just one part of it. Like, I think more than the economic calamity is the social calamity. You look at the summer of 2020. That's like what I talk about when I think of the preview of things to come. The summer of 2020 is going to repeat probably next year, in an election year, and it's probably going to
BLM.
Yeah, exactly.
Riots,
the riots. Yeah, everyone knows the summer of 2020.
And a thing that's kind of swept under the rug as well is that the months leading up to summer of 2020 was all the anti-lockdown protests, where a lot of people from different sides, but mainly it seemed like people on the right, but there were people coming together from all sides that were against the lockdowns. And that's when that whole Boogaloo stuff was happening. And when the riots started, it kind of overpowered those anti-lockdown protests. But 2020 was just proving that the future of America can get real hot real fast, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think that is at the crux of kind of what we're talking about, and the way for the right to sort of present itself when things fall and it rises to the occasion. It really needs to draw from the old right. It needs to draw from the Pat Buchanan, Ron Paul, and sort of 2016 Trump language that was used, and that's going to be the triumph of the right. Otherwise, it's just going to be something even worse than what we have today.
Let's expand on that. Let's expand on that, because we're in solution mode here, and one of the main points that we're making here, and we agree on this, is that the mindset that the old American right had was generally moving towards the right direction. Would you say that is correct, Nick? Would you say you agree with that?
Yeah, and family calls, Amir. So we'll leave them wanting more. We're gonna have to cut it here. I'm gonna have to.
Perfect. I was literally, it's funny, Nick. I was literally just wrapping it up, and that was the final question. So that's perfect. So yeah, just to finish this off real quick, Nick Hankoff. If people would like
nothing to plug. No, don't follow me. Don't come looking for me.
Okay, yeah.
Leave me alone. All right. Bye, Amir. See you guys.
All right. Hey, man. Great talking to you. I'll talk to you
soon. Good to see you, Amir.
And if you all are watching right now, please make sure to like this video, follow me, share this video with your friends and your family. Check out my other videos. I'm live streaming multiple times a week on multiple different platforms, including Rumble, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and maybe some other places here and there. And also, please check out my company, speckerhealth.com, And you can take the new Specker Health Assessment and also check out the new Specker Library, where you can read scientific studies about the ingredients that we use in Specker products, health, and lifestyle, all at the Specker Library for you to read and reclaim your health. And as always, make sure that you are making your health practices a priority in every single day of your life. Thank you all so much for watching. I love you. I'll see you soon. Peace and love.